Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee, thank you very much for providing us with this opportunity to speak with you today about this very important issue. I am a policy analyst at the Center for Educational Freedom at the Cato Institute, although today I am representing only myself. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Institute. I'm also a former legislator from the state of New Hampshire, which is not quite as impressive as getting elected to the Ohio state legislature. We have, as you probably know from going to NCLS or ALEC, we have 400 state legislators in a state with only 1.3 million people, so that's about one legislator for every 3,300 people. I'd say that there are some people who get elected to their high school class president with more votes than it takes to get into the New Hampshire state legislature. But today I would like to focus primarily on the research about the effectiveness of national standards and also the potential ill effects that national standards would have on private schools, particularly private schools that are participating in Ohio's state school choice programs, in particular because the programs do mandate state tests, which we will come in court. There are two, as you probably know, there are two main ideas in education reform circles these days. One idea is that what we need is greater standardization. We need greater centralization. We need to be able to compare apples to apples, and so we need to essentially treat all children equally. We need to have a common core, and we need to have common assessments in order to test that. The other idea, which is embodied by school choice programs, is the idea that what we need is really greater decentralization. That we should be empowering parents to make decisions for their own children, choosing the best schools that meet the individual needs of their individual children. So there are some who want to combine these two ideas, but really they are quite incompatible. The representative earlier asked about what's the effect that national standards are going to have, what do we expect to come out of national standards. Well, the truth is we actually don't have a lot of evidence that national standards work. People will point out that on international assessments like PISA, most of the nations that outperform the United States do have national standards, and that is true. But it is also true that most of the nations that the United States outperforms have national standards. There is no correlation whatsoever between having national standards and having students who have high performance. And as a matter of fact, most of those most of those nations that are outperforming the United States are relatively small and homogeneous, more comparable to an individual state within the United States than the United States itself. The only two large and diverse nations that consistently outperform the United States are Canada and Australia. And historically, neither of those have had national standards, although Australia recently has succumbed to the siren song of standards, and they're in the process of developing and implementing them. Professor Jay Green of the University of Arkansas described the problem with trying to implement national standards. He said, with top-down reforms, people selecting the standards, designing the tests, setting the cut scores, devising consequences for performance, writing the curriculum, and picking the instructional methods have to get it just right. For many different kinds of kids who may need different approaches, and they have to be right over and over again as circumstances and information change. This is a nearly impossible task, especially before special interests attempt to block, dilute, or co-opt such standards. And when standards are controlled locally, a parent who has issues with the standards or a teacher says they're not working in my classroom can go to their local school board or to their local state representative and have a conversation. And they're one out of tens of thousands of people or a few million people. When we adopt national standards, those parents and those teachers who want to affect change really don't have a voice. They're entirely drowned out. And to whom do they turn with Common Core? Where is the body that they go to say, we would like something different. This isn't working. We want to make things, we want to change things. That's not clear. And it's a lot harder to do at the national level than it is to do to come to you, to the state state representatives. Additionally, Common Core undermines the very diversity and innovation that gives parental choice its value. All children are unique. Children have very different needs. We shouldn't even expect that one high-performing school is going to be able to best meet the needs of all the children that just happen to live in a certain geographic area. I know that the state of Ohio has the failing schools model, but the thing is, a school could be a high-performing school. You might have a child in that high-performing school, and the school is failing that particular child. That child needs to go somewhere else. If we have standards that are common, and every school has to meet those same standards, you're depriving those parents of that choice, and you're undermining that sort of innovation. Now, people say, well, Common Core, it's just a set of standards. It doesn't actually prescribe a particular curriculum, and that's true to a certain extent. It does not say which books should be read in the classroom. It does not say which textbooks that you have to use, but the tests ultimately do drive the curriculum. So as Dr. James Schulz of the Shomi Institute wrote about a year ago, he says, the fact is that curriculum standards don't tell teachers how to teach in the same way that a high jump bar doesn't tell a jumper how to jump. You could theoretically jump over a high bar in whatever way you would like, but because of how the high jump is structured, there's a clear advantage to doing the old Fosbury flop. And that's the same with education. If we are going to teach a certain concept in a certain grade, a subject in a certain grade, and in that subject we are going to test concepts A, B, C, and D, you are going to see that teachers are going to teach concepts A, B, C, and D, and they're going to give short shrift to concepts X, Y, and Z. They may switch up the order in which they teach them, but those you can be sure are the tests of the subjects and concepts that they're going to teach. We have California, for example, abandoned its long-standing practice of teaching algebra in the 8th grade and moved it to the 9th grade because that's when Common Core tests algebra. So we see that these standards actually do drive, through the tests, do drive what is taught in the classroom, when it's taught in the classroom, and to some extent even how it's taught in the classroom. If the math exam is going to have area models and number lines, you can be sure that the teachers are going to teach math that particular way. Now, I actually don't have a particular objection to the Common Core standards themselves. In other words, I don't object to the core of Common Core, I object to the common of Common Core. And there are researchers on both sides whom I greatly respect and admire. You've heard from some already, Dr. Stan Rostotsky, Jim Steerkis, Zeb Borman, who I think is here and will be speaking soon. They have very serious and legitimate concerns with the standards. Although there are those on the other side, like Edie Hirsch, whom I also greatly respect and admire, who believes that the Common Core standards are very high quality. The very fact that there is such disagreement among these policy experts shows that we do not want to have one set of national standards. National standards only make sense if there is one right way to teach children, which I don't believe there is. And even if there was, if we knew what that was. And the very fact that there is such a debate shows that we don't know what the one best way is to teach children. It makes sense for a particular state to have standards for the public schools that it operates. But you want to have alternatives. Ohio has a number of school voucher programs. The Common Core should not be imposed on these private schools through the school choice programs, through the voucher programs. Parents that want to leave the public schools for whatever reason, that they're not working for them, and go to the private schools, are looking for alternatives. Now, the fact is, some of these private schools are going to voluntarily choose to adopt whatever standards you devise, and even if you devise other standards, some may still choose to go with Common Core, and that's great. That should be up to individual schools and individual families choosing what works best for them. Whereas we don't have evidence that national standards work, there is a plethora of evidence that parental choice works. Domestically, 11 out of 12 random assignment studies, the gold standard of social science research, show that some or all categories of children participating in those programs had higher performance and higher attainment rates. Globally, my boss, Andrew J. Coulson of the Cato Institute, did a study a few years ago examining the results of over 150 international statistical comparisons of education systems. And his study found that private sector schools consistently outperform government-run schools, and that the most market-like and least regulated education systems performed the best. So educational choice fosters innovation and diversity by putting families in charge. And families can choose from a number of different schools. Some families may want a traditional curriculum, others might want one that's more progressive. Some might want Saxon math, some might want Singapore math, something that's content-rich or skills-based, STEM-focused or liberal arts, Montessori, Waldorf, etc. All these options should be available for children because it's that diversity and innovation that improves over time our education system. So, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee, if you want to foster diversity and innovation in education, the answer lies not in greater standardization and conformity, but in greater freedom and choice. And if you want to strengthen accountability, the best form of accountability is directly to parents, who can choose the education providers that best meet their children's needs and leave those that do not.